Have you ever asked a question in class and got nothing but silence? Yeah. I used to think that my students just didn't want to talk, especially my ESOL learners. You see, I would plan these elaborate discussions, I would incorporate small groups, I would even strategically plan turning talk opportunities specifically designed for my students to talk, and still, I'd get one word answers. Or my favorite, the slow blink. Or better yet, the blank stare, like a deer in headlights. So I came to the conclusion that what I was doing wasn't working. It was time for something different. So this is when I stumbled across the idea of incorporating podcasts into the classroom. So I figured, why not? Let's give it a try. Y'all, when I introduced podcasting to my classroom, it completely changed the way my students participated. I could not believe it. So, in this video, I'd like to just share with you why podcasting changed the way that my students participated and how you too can incorporate podcasting in your classroom. I'm Ebony from Easy Street Teaching and Learning, where we teach smarter, create boldly, and build with confidence. Now, before we really get into it, I want you to know that when I say podcasting, I am not talking about students trying to compete on Spotify or Apple Podcasting. I need you to understand that a classroom podcast is just a structured audio project that allows students to explain, discuss, and teach content using their own voice. It's not about trying to be famous. It's about giving students a reason or a purpose to use their voice. See, here's what I notice. When students know or even think that someone may hear their work, guess what? They try harder. They practice more. They think more. And guess what? They speak in complete sentences. That's right. You heard me. Teachers, that part right there, that is golden. Isn't that what we aim for anyway, for our students to be able to speak in complete sentences? So, I teach students that struggle, especially in the areas of science and social studies. So, I figured that if this is an area where my students struggle most, why not start here? So, I decided, when students are creating podcasts, that means they're speaking about it. And in order to be able to speak about something, that means you have to learn the content. You have to be familiar with it. You have to understand it. So I decided instead of worksheets or having my students just copy notes, let me present this challenge to them. I told them, you're going to create podcasts. Not only are you creating podcasts in class, but our podcast topic will be a science concept. Now, when I introduced this to them in this fashion, my students looked at me like I had lost my mind. But here's what happened. When students now had to explain the difference between a plant cell and an animal cell, or how circuits work, or even how a force can be considered to be both constructive and destructive forces, students had to really truly understand it. This means that they could no longer hide behind the notes that they had copied, or they could no longer just read from the script that their parents had written out on those fabulous take home projects that come back to class, just displaying this wonderful piece of art. They now actually had to understand the content. They had to know it, they had to be familiar with it. They had to make connections. And for my ESOL learners, this became a structured way for them to pronounce words and for them to speak in complete sentences without that fear of having to speak in front of a large audience. They could rehearse it, they could play it back, they could actually hear themselves. This changed everything. Now, let me talk you through how I introduced you to my class. Not the techie part, just the foundational part, how we actually got started. So we discussed what podcasts are, who listens to them, why do we even create podcasts? Then I even allowed them to listen to a student generated podcast similar to this one right here. Not perfect, right? Not professional, just real. And we analyzed it like scholars. What did you notice? What did you hear? Was it clear? Was it interesting? Why? Students, by the way, are great critics. They really enjoyed this. Now, this part was important because it allowed us to collaboratively decide or identify what an effective podcast should sound like, what energy or effort should be put into it. Basically, the do's and don'ts of podcasting in the classroom. So we came up with things like do speak clearly, stay on topic, organize your thoughts, respect your audience. And some of the don'ts we came up with were don't whisper, go off on tangents, rush, sound like you're reading from a grocery list, or read like a robot. And yes, we laughed about it. Here's the key: they owned it. They completely bought in when we did this because we were collaborating. We were doing this together. It wasn't just a lecture, it was teamwork. As we were discussing, I just simply opened up a Word document and I just began recording everything that we were collaboratively discussing. Later, I used this information to create what would become our podcasting checklist. As you can see, this podcasting checklist comes in several different variations, from simple to complex, and colored. If you decide to purchase this, you also have access to a Canva link where you can go in and individualize it and make it your own. I have attached a link to this exact document in the description box below if you are interested in viewing this document. So, as previously stated, I gave my students that one content area, which was science. And as I said before, this was the area where my students struggled the most. This is where the struggle was real. So we started there. And I know that I understand that podcasts require students to explain. And I just truly feel in my heart that in order to be able to explain it, you have to understand it. And if you understand it, that equates to learning it. We brainstormed all of the possible science topics that we have covered so far and will cover this school year in the areas of life science, earth science, and physical science. Then I guided students through trimming this long list of topics that we had brainstormed down. I'd ask them questions like, can you explain it clearly? Is it too broad? What's your angle? Then we worked on titles. And I told my students basically this: if your title is boring, then people are probably going to think that your podcast is boring. And we don't want that. So we decided to have a little fun. And we even used AI to help make that happen. My students were so excited. This truly got them invested. With the help of AI, our titles went from the difference between plant and animal cells to cell detectives inside plant and animal cells. From constructive and destructive processes to earth builders and breakers that shape the planet. Suddenly, they were invested. Now they got a chance to talk in class and use AI, and they didn't get in trouble for it. They were so excited. They were all in. Oh boy, they just couldn't wait to make things happen. Once we truly got started, here's what I noticed. Students that barely spoke were now practicing and rehearsing during lunchtime. And my ESOL learners, they were practicing pronouncing words and using complete sentences all on their own. I even heard students correcting one another and them being receptive to it. I heard things like, Can you say it like this? Or can you say this one more time, but this time make it clearer? It became collaborative, academic, and purposeful. And the confidence shift was incredible, not because it was trendy, but because it was purposeful. And all along the way, students were learning and they didn't even notice it. Now, let's get into it. So, if you're watching this and you're thinking, okay, all of this sounds great, but how would I even start with something like this in my classroom? Let me give you something practical. Just get all the complicated stuff out of your head. You don't need fancy microphones. My students started with just their school issued devices. You know, the laptops that already come with the standard built in webcam and the standard microphone. That is what we started with. Just that. No fancy studio. I wasn't pushing to get my students to publish anything on Apple Podcasts. We just used good old fashioned Canva. And later, I'll show you how we used Adobe Express as well. Here's how to start simple. Start with one short episode. Keep it at 2 to 3 minutes minimum. Give students one focused topic to focus on. For example, have students to explain how animals or plants are classified in their own words. That's it. Keep it simple. When the topic is focused, students feel safer. Before students ever record, you should model. Model for them what it sounds like, what to do. Just keep it at like a simple 60 seconds or less recording of yourself. Yes, even if it feels awkward, just do it. When your students hear you try, it's going to automatically lower their fear and they're going to feel more comfortable to try on their own. Don't just hand them a rubric and ask them to follow it. Discuss it. Get them on board. Go through it with them. Ask, what makes someone sound confident? What makes a podcast clear? What makes it interesting? When students understand these things, it increases the likelihood that when they get started, they'll know exactly what they should be aiming for, which increases the likelihood of them being more effective with their production. This is huge. Make rehearsal mandatory. Have them read it out loud, practice with a partner, even get feedback from their peers. You see, confidence is built in rehearsal, not in recording. You don't have to push it to the world or to the public all at once. Start off slow. Keep it local or in-house. You can start by sharing it in your Google Classroom or on whatever your learning management system is in your school. Play it for the class. Create a private folder and just let your students know this is where we're going to keep our initial podcast until we get them to the point where we feel confident or comfortable sharing them with others. You see, this is what creates safety, and safety, that builds confidence too. Don't worry about the logistics of everything. Just start. And as you start, when you go through that process of trial and error, I promise you, things will get better. It'll get to the point where you do feel confident and comfortable enough to share your work with others. And what's most important is that the students will be learning all along the way, which is our number one priority. Now, in this video, I focus mainly on the why and the how I introduced the podcasting concept to my class and how you too can do the same thing. But in the next video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how we got started. How did I guide my students through writing their scripts? How did we structure our episodes? How did students design their covers? How did we finalize, publish, and share our podcasts? Because structure is what makes this successful. If you're thinking you like this, you're interested, how do I get started? Well, in the next video, I'm going to walk you through step by step exactly what to do. If you're a teacher who wants your students speaking more, thinking deeper, and actively engaged in content, then subscribe to my channel. You see, that's what we do here. And I'll see you in the next video where we build this out together. Until next time, teach smarter, create boldly, and build with confidence, the easy street way. And remember, dreams don't work unless you do. See you later.